Right, hello. Happy weekend, I guess. Let's see. I have this, what is this thing? I have this glare in my, I'm trying to identify the source of that light. Is it a preview thing? Yeah, doesn't matter. Let's see. So I'm writing this article on really like the rant I did on the stream about giving up React. I wanted to kind of write a more formal article on it and also share some learnings on what it would mean as a React developer to move to Vue and dealing with the kinds of complexity that I have been doing with these productivity apps. And why is this? Oh, is it because? Oh, interesting. Anyways, these kinds of productivity apps, so yeah, I'm just gonna keep writing on this and just talk through it as I'm doing it, and then we'll see if we get to some code. But yeah, anyway, so first of all, I wanted to create like an introduction, so like my opinions here doesn't come from like nothing. I have a lot of experience with React and building complex applications, so I just wanted to emphasize that by I'm just gonna read through it and then I'm gonna keep updating as we're reading here. So introduction. After the summer of 2014, I quit my job as a consultant. Up to that point, I worked on several projects, amongst those building a highly interactive web-based switchboard for mobile phones. It will take events from the GSM network to produce your call state, show queues of callers, conference calls, SMS, phone books, call groups, Outlook sync, etc. It was all written in JavaScript, and we used no frameworks. It gave me a solid understanding of the language and how to organize and scale code. I must have been a magnet to productivity tools because that is all I have been working on since. Managing a lot of client state due to complex user interfaces that has a high degree of interactivity. To manage all this, I built tools like Cerebral, later Overmind, and written a myriad of articles like updating UIs, value comparison versus mutation tracking, reducing, reducing the pain of developing apps, UI as an implementation detail, etc. My most recent work has been at Code Sandbox. You know what? In this article, I am going to share some strong opinions, but and even though these opinions are based on my experience with React, it is also based on the types of applications I have been building. React is a tool I honestly owe my whole career to. It has also to honestly owe my whole career to. It has so in this article, I'm going to share some strong opinions, and even though these opinions are based on my experience with React, it is also based on the types of applications I have been building. React is a tool I honestly owe my whole career to. Please consider this. Hi, Adam. Please keep this in mind as you read on. So user interfaces as a function of state. I quit my job in 2014 because my partner and me were moving across the country and I wanted to spend 6 months self-educating. I was incredibly lucky because at this point React and Webpack was starting to take hold. I remember being hesitant to begin with, but long story short, the idea of state being a function of UI resonates as strongly with me today as it did when I first got it. So we have a counter that takes some props and it shows the count. Every time the count changes, this counter function runs again and React will reconcile and update the DOM. But what truly makes this great is the dynamic nature of it. I can just use JavaScript to create the dynamic behavior of this user interface. But not only that, I get complete TypeScript support out of the box. Not only to infer the types of the props, but type narrowing and other feature and any other feature from TypeScript that applies to expressing dynamic user interfaces. This is a really good thing when building large productivity apps. But this core concept of state being a function of UI has been faded over time in React. This fundamental concept that makes so much sense first started to diminish with the introduction of hooks. So here we see a state hook. Embracing the component as a function makes sense, but the introduction of hooks disrupted React developers' intuition about how code is executed in the language runtime. For example, every time this component reconciles, it looks like it will initialize the count state, but that is not true. It will only do it on the first call of the component function. The function looks stateless and pure, but there is this hidden state in React that you cannot see by reading the code. This disruption becomes an even bigger problem. That's why I read out loud, because then I hear how it sounds. I love finding rhythm in text. Like I really love writing, because to me it's like finding a rhythm. It's almost as much as like not creating music, but in the sense of like melodies, but there's a rhythm to it, and I really like figuring out. So when you read it, it's kind of, you find like just enhances the message somehow. I don't know how to explain it. Anyways, the disruption becomes an even bigger problem as hooks introduces multiple function closures in the component scope. Can introduce, I have to be careful here. Can introduce multiple function closures in the component scope. Without hooks, there are no active closures. Let us inspect the counter again. When you read this code, your intuition tells you that we are just calling a function and there is nothing stuck that will affect the next call of the function, right? It is a clean function. You give it some input, you get some output. But with hooks, oh my god, what's happening with this scroll? With hooks, this can happen. And here I'm basically showing a use effect that has like a dependency to this toggle thing. And it just logs out RV toggle. The callback pass to use effect creates a stuck function scope for the effect based on props toggle we put in the dependency array. That means some of the code in your component lives longer than the reconciliation, than the last reconciliation of the user interface. But not only that, different closures are bound to different past reconciliations. Like this is the crazy stuff with hooks. So again, we're like doing a timeout, and then we console log the props count after a second. If this component reconciles during the timeout, due to count being increased, the log will still show 0. I know it's a silly example, but the point is that hooks disrupted our intuition about how code executes in the language runtime, and it is a big additional mental overhead to the simplicity of the hooks disrupted our intuition about how, in the language around, this is how code executes. And it is a big additional. I use a lot of that. This is a thing I try to be conscious about. I use a lot of what's it called? What's this word? Like what do we call it? Adjektiv. Ragnar, hva er adjektiv på engelsk? Adjective? Do we say adjective? Anyways, you know the words describing things. I use a lot of those. And I try not to use them that much because it kind of, when you do that, it seems like you're trying to make a point more important than it really is. Like the point itself is the perfect weight for the message you're trying to convey. Adding these like overly describing words just makes the point fall through, as if you're trying to convince someone. Anyways, so it disrupted our intuition about it disrupted our intuition about how code executes. Anyways, and it is an additional mental overhead to the simplicity of state is a function of UI. UI is a function of state, sorry. What was the title? Yeah, a function of state, yeah. Anyways, making it faster. React has never been the most performant solution because of the reconciler, but the reconciler is what has given us the ability to just use the language to express dynamic user interfaces using a function. To improve the performance of React, we have typically leaned on Memo. This primitive is basically a wrapper around components doing props checking to see if React needs to reconcile that component. What I found curious though is that React has such eager reconciliation. For example, we have a my component, has no props, it just renders something. Then we have the parent component that has some state, and it updates some state within the parent component that's shown in the parent component, and then it just happens to render this nested component. When the count updates in parent component, it will by default reconcile the my component as well, even though it takes no props. Why reconcile user interface of state if there is no state? And then there is a question why Memo is not just part of any component taking props. And then there's a question why Memo is not natively internally added on any component taking props. There is of course an argument that the comparing of the props is overhead when they often change. The extreme case would just add work, as it will compare the props and reconcile every time. But calling a component, evaluate all the hooks, and reconcile the returned user interface description, my intuition just tells me that this comparing of props would end up net positive. This default comparing of props, but who am I to challenge this? The reason I talk about it though is what follows. That sounds a bit weird. Anyways, as React had performance issues, it introduced concurrent mode. Concurrent mode allowed React to split up its reconciliation work. Previously, the reconciliation was blocking, meaning that there was risk of jank in the user interface when the component trees was big. When the component trees was big. When the component trees are big. And Memo, when component trees and Memo is not efficiently used. And with the planned concurrent mode, and with concurrent mode, we got strict mode. Strict mode was thought of as a way to help developers detect side effects in their components due to wrong hooks usage. In development of in development React, comma, in development, React will call components, hooks, and lifecycle hooks twice to ensure that there are no side effects. This was, why do I keep doing past? This is important as concurrent mode needs a guarantee that any pending reconcile componentry can be thrown away. But with this addition, the intuition of how a React component works was disrupted again. Previously, you could safely use Oh, hi Samuel. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's there's something brewing in the community, I feel like. And it's taken me like this whole like last year, from last summer to now, to really like find the specifics of this frustration. And I hope this article kind of really explains historically how we kind of gotten to this point. And this is of course not affecting everyone, but it does affect some of us. Depends on the type of application you're building. But yeah, anyway, so with strict mode, when strict mode was introduced, you started getting problems with use effect, right? Because we typically used use effect to say I'm mounted, and then you return I am not mounted. But you can't do that anymore because of strict mode calling it twice. And just the fact, yeah, anyways, let me read. But this was no longer possible and added confusion as things are running twice in development. We basically lost the most basic lifecycle hook for components, when the user interface is mounted and when it is unmounted. I think I can do this. When the user interface is mounted and when it is unmounted. And now we are here with React 19 and its compiler. The compiler optimizes your code, adding memoization for you. But there is one thing the compiler will not fix, and it is the most important source of performance issues in my experience: contexts. I'm not sure. I'm not a technically good writer. I'm just good at, it's almost like I play the piano, or I learned the piano a long time ago, and I was never a good technically good piano player, but I was really good at finding melodies. And I feel the same with text. Like I'm good at finding rhythm in text, but I'm not technically a good text writer. Anyways, one of the main reasons for performance issues is sharing state across components. To do that efficiently, we use a React context. The consuming components will reconcile when the value from the context changes. What this means in practice is that consuming components will reconcile regardless of what state from this. So I'm showing a reducer here. Or what state from this reducer there. This is something. What this means in practice is that the consuming components will reconcile regardless of what state from this reducer they are consuming. This is something the React compiler cannot fix. It can memorize as much as it wants in my context, the my context component, but at the end of the day, the value passed on the context has to change, and every single consuming component will reconcile. So even with the React compiler, we will still be leaning towards global state management solutions to fix the performance issues of React. And this is my biggest friction with React. Why do we need to work with two different sets of state management primitives in different types of runtimes to build applications? Rolling back. So let us move back in time. There is no React compiler, there is no concurrent mode, no strict mode, and no hooks. Back to user interface being a function of state. If React rather introduced reactive primitives and made components observers, could we have avoided having to deal with the mental overhead of hooks, strict mode, no lifecycle hooks, React compiler, and a secondary global state management solution? Yeah, I am of course in no position to evaluate that, but I am allowed to, or I am in a position to evaluate. Well, my point is that this is like impossible to. I am of course in no position to conclude on that, but I am allowed to ask the question, right? But I've jumped quickly into this. We will never know. And yeah, we will never know. But maybe there is this is a bit of a rough transition. Anyways, we will never know, but maybe there is a solution out there that did take a different path. A solution. Oh, 2-2. Thanks, Adam. This is like live. Maybe that would be much better. Like, you don't need like the TypeScript type checker. You just do a stream and then people will yell at you. Anyways, we will never know, but maybe there is a solution out there that did take a different path. A solution that allows us to keep what we fundamentally love about React, but without all these overhead and performance concerns with state management. Yeah, so I think I'm kind of just in more of a what's it called, disposition mode here. But yeah, let me just go through it. So what it needs JSX support, reconciles the user interface, adhering to user interface as a function of state. Components should only reconcile by what they observe, meaning they default to not reconciling from parents. Reactive primitives defined in a separate scope, but exposed to the component where we reconcile the user interface and lifecycle hooks. The contestants, yeah, we have to break up. Oh. Even though we are trying to break out of a relationship with the technical decisions of React, we still love the community, and we still want a community. Anyways, I'm eager to do some coding. So one of the other community is important. Even though we are trying to break out of a relationship with the technical decisions of React, due to the technical decisions of React, we still it's almost like I'd love to make this article more as if I'm actually writing a letter to React, a breakup letter, like using statements like, it's not you, it's me, I just have other needs that you can't like meet me on. You have so many other people in your life where you feel fulfillment and you cover their needs. Anyways, even though we're trying to break out of a relationship due to the technical decisions of React, we still want a community and ecosystem. Yeah, exactly. It is you, not me. We still want a community and ecosystem of an ecosystem. Anyways, yeah, so this is going to be a bit rougher. So the choices we have is Vue, Svelte, Angular, and Solid.js. Maybe we have others, I don't know. We can immediately drop off Svelte and Angular. as templates, compilation, and custom type checking is not where we... Well, I guess compilation isn't complete. This is a bit difficult because like Angular and Svelte, they are compiling their templates, but Vue is also transpiling JSX. So it's like, what's compilation, what's transpilation? But the difference is that like JSX isn't changing any behavior. It's not like Svelte actually adds code. You know, it changes your code, how your code executes from what you're reading, as opposed to JSX, where the code executes exactly the same. It just changes the syntax, right? As templates. Yeah, I'll make a note here. Emphasize magic of templates. Yeah. And custom type checking is not where we want to go. Solid.js does get us quite close, but there is no reconciliation in Solid.js, meaning we cannot rely on the language for expressing dynamic user interfaces. That leaves us with Vue. Now, most people know Vue for its templating language and single file component, but actually one tiny little change gives us everything. Yeah, so this is where I'm still exploring. But actually one tiny little change gives us everything we want. All Vue projects uses Vite, also developed by the Vue team. In the configuration, we just have to change, instead of import Vue from Vite.js plugin Vue, we use plugin Vue JSX. By simply changing to plugin Vue JSX, we're ready to embrace reconciling user interfaces, observing state. Let us start by defining a simple component and render it. So you can do this in Vue. Just export function app, hello world, create app, give it the app, and mount it. It works just fine. And currently there is no real difference. We can also use props. So we can introduce props and use those props. Where it starts like getting challenging, and this is kind of where I'm reflecting now. It's with this really annoys me. It's with children. So this is great with React, right? You have a property called children, and then you just use those children. And you have typing of the children. So when you're consuming a component, you know how to pass the children. What does it support? Is it a string, or is it an actual React node, or what is it? And the great thing about Vue is that children is also being observed. So it's not part of the reconciliation the same way, which makes it so optimal. But as you can see here, the way you would actually do this in Vue, like there's different ways you can actually do it. But the way I found to be most appealing is that you say use slots, and then you have slots default. But the thing is, you can't type this. So I can't like use slots and give it the type for default even. So it might be undefined in TypeScript, which is kind of true, right? But if you have typed it as such, but the point is, even if you typed it here, it wouldn't be typed from the consumption point. So this is really annoying. And it's basically something that, yeah, I'm also writing it here. It is certainly simpler to use children from the props, and with React, they will also be typed when consuming the component. For now, this typing benefit is something we need to give up, as far as I know. But remember that this mechanism in Vue is one of the core components of performance. But now, yeah, exactly. So this one's a little bit... but what I think I'm going to do with this article is that I'm going to... that's why I stopped on this thing. but actually one tiny little change gives us everything we want. I think I want to say, let us see how far we get with the Vue API as is, because we know that the Vue API isn't designed for JSX. It's designed for the single file component, I guess is the term. So I think this should rather be an exploration to see how close do we get to React. And with the children, that is definitely one place it doesn't break apart, but it's not ideal. But this is definitely fixable. That's the thing. It's like, as I said, Vue just isn't mainly focused on this, but it's definitely fixable. And I find it interesting that why couldn't they have children? Like, it could be a getter. Yeah, so what happens currently with the types that Vue has is that if you do add children to the props, at the consumption point, it will treat that as any other prop. So it won't actually treat it as like the children. So I'm not sure how do you get that? I tried to play around with it, how to kind of get that behavior, but it didn't. Nei! Har du kjøpt helikopter? Oi, forsiktig. Kan du lande selv? Nei! Kult. Det var kult, det. Åja, er det sånn du setter den opp, og så drar du, og så flyr den opp? Ja, kult. Røyk den? Morfar er så sterk, vet du. Kanskje han er litt for sterk. Det var synd, da. Ja, pappa skal bare holde på litt til, og så kommer jeg etterpå. Men det var veldig kult. Jeg kommer etterpå, Oskar. Ja. Sorry. But yeah, currently, like, the way this works is that you're configuring your TS config to use Vue as the JSX runtime. And then it includes typing. We did this with a project called CSS19, which is using new features from React 19 to give first-class support for CSS, a CSS prop in components with hoisting and deduplication and everything of CSS just using React. It's actually really awesome. Anyways, but yeah, so there you have the typing, and you can like override. So in that CSS19 project, we've overridden some typing of JSX so that you get this CSS prop, right? And I looked at the typing for Vue of JSX, but I can't like figure out how did they remove the children? How did they make children become just any other prop? Because that would be a way to fix it. It's just to bring back children, just like JSX, and I guess maybe that's what is children? Is it a JSX thing or is it a React thing? I don't know. Anyways, but if we could make that typing behave as normal, we could, as you say, Adam, we could just make children a getter, and then under the hood it will call slots.default. And as a React developer, you don't care about, because Vue has something, well, it's called slots, and you can have named slots, which actually works. So you could kind of give an object as children, and then you have keys where you say like header, blah, blah, blah. But we have to be a little bit careful because children in Vue isn't the same. So like in React, if you wanted named placeholders for contents, you could just use props, right? You could have like a header and you could insert React components there, and footer, and you put React components there, and that would just work. But I'm not sure if that would actually work in Vue. I think there's some unique behavior to slots. So yeah, but I have some other thoughts on this. But anyways, but now let us introduce some state management. As mentioned, our state management will be defined in its own function scope, which is called when the component mounts. Did I say anything about that? I don't think I did. Anyways, I want to do some coding. Vue exports a defined component function that we will need to take advantage of. Yeah, and this is where I kind of am at now. So yeah, I'm really currently I'm like happy about what I'm trying to communicate, and now it's more figuring out like how would you best introduce a React developer to Vue, and then how would you most efficiently work with Vue to do like complex productivity apps, and let's see, I might have to drop off soon. Our youngest, he has a babysitter, but like staying at home. Let's see. So I built this component thing. I think we're okay. Anyways, so what I've done, let me take you through it. So let's do this, and then let's do this, and let's do this. So we'll start with like hello world. Hei, Oskar. Går det bra? Ja, men du, nå skal morfar være her litt og passe på deg. Og så skal pappa bare jobbe litt. Og så kom igjen ned, og skal vi være sammen etterpå igjen. Ja, men vi kan ikke spille nå. Nå er det så fint vær. Kan du ikke ta med morfar på trampolinen eller på lekeplassen da? Eller sykle litt? Det blir ikke noe gaming nå uansett. Nei. Jeg er lei for det altså. Men vi kan game litt til etterpå. Ja, jeg skjønner det. Men vi kan ikke det nå. Jeg er lei for det. Ja, men vi har jo spilt. Og nå er morfar her, så dere kan leke og ha det artig sammen. Er det ikke noe artig? Oi, du må ikke... Nei, du. Nei, Oskar, det må du ikke gjøre. Gudskjelov. Du må ikke trykke på det. Okay. Da blir det ødelagt. Men pappa kommer etterpå, ok? Hva det grønne er? Det kan jeg vise deg en gang. Men jeg får ikke vise deg det nå. Anyways, so as I said, what we could do here is consuming is the reason props children couldn't be typed from the outside, and yeah, because isn't the children props built into Jet, or is it not? Yeah, exactly. I thought it was built into JSX, so I'm wondering if they explicitly changed the typing to remove. I see that they delete. That's interesting. I see in the actual like JSX runtime that they delete children from props. So I do think children is an official part of JSX. Um, but that's fine, right? Because they can still have slots under the hood. It's just that we want to re-expose children on the props as a getter, and then use slots under the hood. But there is this concern, as I mentioned, that what if you actually want to pass different components in kind of as like multiple children, where we typically just use props in React? Would that still work here? But and consuming Vue libraries, I don't think it would be a problem. My biggest concern is I think the concept of child trees, or what I'm gonna call it, children, or the concept of children is technically different in Vue than it is in React. Anyways, so I think it would be better to just accept that there's something called slots, and it's called slots because it's way more performant than making children part of the general props concept. But then, oh, you know, the amazing things about small children is they have this amazing ability to just start playing on their own, creating their own world. But it's typically because they're pooping. And it's getting smelly in here. You see, I get to do this on my own now, but it's very it smells like shit in there. But let's keep going. Yeah, Samuel. Um, please, I need to get a haircut as well. Actually, not now, but yeah. Let's see. Oh. So what I think, or at least a path here, is that the article explains how similar Vue is to React, and then where it's different, and then introduce and then introduce like this small abstraction that that kind of fills in the gaps. So the way this works is that now I have a function, and I'm calling it template because that's also important. If this is going to be a thing where we create this little abstraction, it shouldn't diverge from Vue. Like if you choose to use Vue, you shouldn't have this special version of Vue. You should really use Vue with the terminology and everything it offers, where Vue talks a lot about setup and template. So setup is basically where you do state management, and template is where you express your UI. And this is kind of the separation you would have to do in React as well, right? If you want the React to behave as observe state, reconcile UI, you would have to have a term for the thing that reconciles the UI, that being component. But then the state management of that component needed to be called something else because it's not defined in the component. And the component is really both things, the reconciling UI and the state management. So yeah, anyways. But the point here is that now we have a component or a template that doesn't take any props. So this component abstraction will now pass slots in here. So what you'll be able to do is you can say slots default. Currently this is typed as the normal slots. So you can do this. And now you can also, again, you don't have typing on the consuming side, but you use slots as is. But if I were to introduce some props here, like count number. Now you see that it gives an error, and that is because when you're using state management, like when it's not just a function, you're actually yeah, this is interesting. So if I were to just export this function, it would just work. I would not need to do this. The reason I need to add this is because I have a setup inside this component. But we actually don't need that. You know what we can do here? Okay, so let's change this. So when do we know this? Yeah, we do. We do. So when it's a template and it has props, we don't actually need this. And we know this because it's a single argument. Yeah, okay, this is interesting. But if we do have setup, then we have setup with props. Yeah, we do need the prop. Okay, this is interesting. So let's see how this looks like. So when the arg's length is 1, we actually just return this. Oops, sorry. We just return this. Oh, wait, we can't do that. But maybe that's even okay. No, wait, we can do that. Sorry. So yeah. So what we do is component, and we do this. And that would be props, context, and then we do. I'm going somewhere with this. I'll show you. Well, we're not using props here, so context. That's a setup context. And let's just call it any. And then we'll return component, and we're gonna give the component. I don't think we can actually override the name here, but I think we can do this. Anyways, we'll check it. And now we don't really have this signature anymore. But arg's length can, yeah, so it can be 2. Okay, I think this is correct. Sorry. Okay, so when we just have props, this should just work. Let's see if it does. Let's see. Props.count. And then we have count 42. Okay. Let's see, and let's. Oh, interesting. Why didn't that work? Function. Oh, sorry. We have to call it, of course. We're binding it. There we go. Yeah. So now we technically don't need this wrapper now. Technically. But the problem is, as soon as we add some children to it, we need it. Like, or that's the choice. Like in the API design, I think even though you can do this and then you only move to this if you want to introduce states, But the problem is the children, right? One thing is, yeah. Okay, let's try this. So we're only going to use this for stateful components, because there's no reason to use it for, because you can just use, as I said, like you can just use slots like this, and it's the same thing, right? We don't need that special passing. So we can do this, and then we have component with but maybe you don't even need that then. Like the thing I like about having this, okay, let me just, oh my god, I'm so all over the place. So this is app setup. What I like about this is that we're separating, oops, sorry. We're separating, so this will be state. We are separating the setup from the template. But okay, let's compare it. But this could also be written as, I guess that's what we're kind of exploring here. To what extent do we actually need to? So we can say app define component. So this same thing could be expressed as this, and then we'll do return. And then we would use slots in here, and we would still get slots just like that. And then if we did like const count equals ref here, get count, return count as value, or we could just return count for that matter. And then you would have count here. So these two are like the same. The thing I just like about this is that you're separating the setup from the template, and it actually looks like the single file component, because it also has a setup and a template part. So it's just, I just really like it, but it's a personal opinion, and I don't think it really matters. I don't think it really matters. So maybe the article should rather be what it's going through. And then at the end, I could introduce like this tiny helper thing that separates app setup from, like, setup from templates. Well, of course, here, if you had like, yeah, and I wonder how like props count number. Har du bæsja? Skal vi gå og skifte? Okay, I have to go. I have to change a diaper. What did I say? Ja, jeg må bare si ha det. So anyway, so this is where I'm at. I kind of have this abstraction in mind that I personally really like, but I don't think it's important for the article. So it's more just figuring out how to present Vue to React developers. And the only thing that got me was the children. It took me actually quite a bit of research to understand that you can actually use slots here. But when it comes to introducing, like, you need this one scope for state management, and you can return the reconciling scope, I think that will make sense. But maybe I could end by saying, like, okay, but doing this research, I fell in love with this tiny little abstraction that separates the setup from the template. And yeah. Anyways, I have to go. Thanks for Ja? Jeg snakker engelsk, ja. Mm. De som ser på. Nei, jeg kan ikke se de, men de kan se meg. Det er noe som heter å streame. Okay. Thanks again. Sleep tight, Adam. Or is it night? No, wait, it's early now, isn't it? Anyways, doesn't matter. Have a good day.